everybody, welcome back to the Auto Bravado channel. Today I'm here with this 2004 Saturn Ion Red Line. Let's get into the review. Alright, let's talk Saturn Ion Red Line. And before we get into that, I want to talk about the company itself, Saturn, which was a spin-off of all the other companies by General Motors in an attempt to appeal to the younger crowd. Really was at the time, and especially in the early 2000s. This specific example is from the 2004 model year. It was really designed to appeal to the younger generation, just partly because of its weird, quirky styling. I mean, everything about this car is just weird, and we'll get into that in a little bit. First you have Chevy, and then Pontiac, and then Oldsmobile, and so on. And then in 1985, General Motors founded Saturn. And this specific car is from the mid-2000s, being the 2004 example of the Saturn Ion. And it just really goes to show you how far Saturn has come in its short 30-year lifespan. Alright, so the Saturn Ion was produced from around 2003 to 2007, existing from a four-door sedan to a four-door quad coupe. We'll get to that in a minute. And it was really just interesting because the way General Motors marketed this car is unlike any other subcompact or compact sedan that you've ever seen in the early 2000s. You could get it with pretty much any four-cylinder variant of any displacement at the time. I mean, there was tons of motors from a supercharged variant to a big four-cylinder. I mean, it's just really, really amazing about this car. And as you can tell by the styling of this example with the chrome wheels and the silver paint, it's just an oddity. It really is. This specific example is the top of the line Saturn Ion Red Line. This is the sporty variant. This is the Racer Boy variant. It has the 2-liter supercharged LSJ 4-cylinder, which is really, really amazing. The low end torque is absolutely amazing. I mean, it's just a raw experience. Get into the inside of the Saturn Ion Red Line, I just have to talk specifically about this vehicle's curb weight, which sits at around 2,945 pounds, and that's really light considering this vehicle has a 2-liter supercharged inline 4-cylinder. The reason for this incredible weight savings is because of this car's construction, and this is absolutely amazing, and I don't think you'll ever see this ever again, but this car is literally made of plastic. And as you can see here, this little dent, the rear door is made of plastic, the rear quarter panel is made of plastic, as well as this entire piece here is made of plastic. It even sounds like it. I can say this, and for pretty much anybody, I wouldn't want to be in this car during a crash. So now, before we get inside the interior of the Saturn Ion, I just have to point out the key. I know we do this every time, but there's a reason for this. This key is just so weird. So all the buttons are worn off over time and everything. This is the unlock button, and this is the lock button. This is the trunk, this is the panic button. And what really makes this key interesting is the fact that the key is just shaped so weird. Here's another amazing quirk I just have to show you. So we're gonna go ahead and unlock the car here, and it's already open, the door's open. You think, okay, this is interesting. You just called it a 4-door coupe. Well, this actually has 4 doors, and what is absolutely amazing is that you pull this little latch right here, and you have rear opening suicide doors. This is just the coolest thing. This is a quirk that you can only get from a Saturn. I mean, look at this. This is just so weird. I mean, all of the other compact sedans were nothing like this in the early 2000s. I mean, rear suicide doors. I mean, look at this latch down here. Big, girthy latch. This is just really cool. I never thought I'd be so excited about a door, but it's really cool because I don't know any other car in the world that is like this other than maybe a Rolls-Royce or the Mazda RX-8 of the early 2000s. So this is really cool, especially from a company like Saturn. So now I want to get inside the interior of the Saturn Ion Red Line, and something that's really apparent on entry. If you know anything about this car, you'll know this interior is absolutely insane. Everything is made so misshapen and curvy. I mean, it's just, I mean, take a look. I guess we'll just jump right into it. I want to talk about the door panel. There's about 5 or 10 curves, lines, gaps here and there. It's a really complicated door panel for something that only has 2 windows and mirror control switches as well as a lock. So really interesting. Now I want want to talk about the dash, which is obviously the most interesting thing about this car. Everything slopes downwards towards you. There's little cutouts here to place maybe coins or something like that. The air vents are bulbous and they stick out of the dash. I mean, this is quite possibly the weirdest interior I've ever seen on a car, and that really adds to the character of this car. You buy this thing, you know it's weird, and you accept that, and you like it. It's a good weirdness. Now I want to come over here to all of the gauges. You have your speedometer in the middle and your rev counter on the right there, and then you obviously have all of your other functions over here. And what's really interesting is, and this is a manual transmission, and generally you're going to want your rev counter here in the center that you can see it. You can change back on the steering wheel, change and everything, and it's mounted off to the side. And the owner tells me, you know, now that he's been driving this car for quite a while, when he ever gets in another car, he always turns his head to the right and forgets that all of the driver functions are in front of him. Very interesting. To the Saturn. Anyways, so everything in here is really interesting because there's no ergonomics in play at all here. I mean, the cup holders are just stamped into a chunky, you know, sloppy piece of plastic, and there's a little storage area here and down here. So as far as usability and the technology in here, there's not really much else. And after all, this is the driver focused Saturn Ion. Now I want to get in the rear seats of the Saturn Ion. So we have the door open here, and we've just opened the rear suicide door. So we're going to go ahead and hop in. We're going to have to stick our head under this little seat belt latch here. And what we can do now is we can grab this little handle and we can close the door. And one little problem with this is if you're just coming to sit back here and you don't have someone obviously driving the car, it's a bit hard to close the front driver's door. But nonetheless, once we move on to getting out of the rear seats, I have to point out it's a little hard. There's no latch located anywhere here on the inside of the door because you have to open it from the outside. So you have to reach all the way around here. You have to find the latch and open the door. So it's not necessarily the easiest way to get out, but it is the only way. Something else that's really interesting, these are Recaro seats, and they've used a combination of cloth and vinyl material, and there's cloth on the actual seated parts where your body will be touching, but everywhere else they've used this vinyl material, and the seat looks relatively basic. But the nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about it cracking in multiple places. And as far as headroom and legroom go back here, it's really interesting because the roof is sort of concave up a little bit in the back, so they've really thought about that, and legroom is relatively fine as well. The back seats here one more time. This is only a 4-seater, even though there's 4 doors. There's no middle seat here as well. I mean, there's cup holders, little storage space for other things. I mean, your seat belts and everything, but it's a really basic interior back here. It's just really interesting how much sealage they've actually had to put on the door. I mean, it goes all the way down here from the bottom into the inside of the door. I mean, it's not exactly the prettiest piece, but it's there. I want to come down here to the bottom of the front driver's side door, where we'll come into the door jamb. You'll see this little sticker that says Saturn on it. It says Spring Hill Assembly in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Built with pride by the partnership of Saturn and UAW Local. This is such a cool sticker, and if I imagine, I don't think you're going to see any Saturns with stickers like this in this condition. They're either all torn up, scratched off, or just faded. On the outside of the car, and I want to come over here to the gas cap. So it's unlocked right now. We can go ahead and pop it open, and what's really interesting is they didn't bother with locking it or anything, having any lock. They just stuck a little cutout. You can stick your finger in, open your gas door. You know, in this case specifically, there's no style for style details here, but it's just really interesting that they've done this. Go a little further with the gas door here, and I have to point out again that this vehicle was made as a sedan and a 4-door quad coupe, meaning the suicide doors and the regular doors obviously. And I have to come over here to the gas cap, which I'm willing to bet, and the gas door, it says coupe on here, meaning it's for the 4-door quad coupe and not the sedan. And I'm willing to bet that the gas doors on all of the Ions are completely different than the sedans. This is just crazy. And something Something else I just have to talk about is the placement of the rear spoiler. It's not really meant for actual downforce or anything, just style for style in this instance, but it's really interesting because of the placement. It's not far back or tilted or anything. It's just plopped right in the center. There's no, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, you can stick your hand through it and everything, but it's just really weird. Right, so now I want to get in the rear trunk of the Ion, and something that's just really interesting to me is, you know, upon entrance, it looks relatively normal, but now, you know, we come down here and see all this stuff is exposed and everything. We have this little pull tab. We go ahead and pull it up, and it reveals the battery. It's located in the trunk for better weight distribution, and as far as performance engineering goes, this is quite amazing, especially coming from a company that makes, you know, decent cars. Also something really cool, not too many cars had this back in the day, and especially in this specific trim, but we go ahead and pull these two little things right here. It's broken on that side. We go ahead and pull that. We can push the rear seat open to the actual cabin. This is really cool because it allows for you to store long items in the back of here. And a lot of new cars today still don't even have this. And it's really amazing that they had it all the way back in 2004. I just have to point out here, these are factory Recaro seats, and they look really cool. They're very bolstered and comfortable, especially up here at the lumbar and down here at the thigh support, especially right over here. And they've seriously put it out a little bit just for that little bit of extra comfort and grip. Smart thinking on Saturn's part. All right, so now we're getting under the hood of the 2004 Saturn Ion Red Line. So this is the most powerful form of General Motors Ecotec 4-cylinders. It's a 2-liter inline-4 with a supercharger on it, Eaton M90 supercharger. From factory, it develops 205 horsepower and, more importantly, 200 pound-feet of torque. And I mean, just look at this thing. This is a screw roots style supercharger, not a centrifugal style, and it looks really, really cool. And this is obviously electronically controlled. It's got drive-by-wire and variable valve timing, as well as variable valve lift. But what's really amazing is, you know, how much everything is out in the open. I mean, this is the head. This is the head on the engine block. This is just really, really cool. And something that a lot of you know, these superchargers rob power from the engine, so it takes a certain amount of power to run the supercharger. It does then end up giving it a net gain, but something that's really surprising is the fuel economy, which is 25 city and 29 highway. This is really surprising, especially in this application. General Motors has really made their powerful Ecotec 4-cylinder, well, relatively fuel efficient. I can tell you it is not getting anywhere near those fuel economy figures because this one is heavily modified. It has a smaller supercharger pulley, higher pound fuel injectors, a performance supercharger belt, a stage 2 tune, which really, really makes this thing come alive. I've driven this once before, and I can tell you the torque is absolutely insane, regardless of the gear. You can put it in 5th gear and lug it at 2,000 RPM, and you will feel it pull. Taken an in-depth look at this modified Saturn Ion Red Line. Now, it's time to take it out on the road for a drive. All right, guys, we're going to take the Saturn Ion Red Line out on a drive. Here we go. We're going to hop in. We're going to put our seatbelt on. We're going to start it up. Here we go. Awesome. Starts right up. All right, here we go. So the shifter feels really interesting. It's like perfectly notchy, but not too hard to put in a gear. I mean, when you're ripping, it's not too bad. And again, that low end torque I have to talk about is really, really amazing. I mean, it makes it feel like it's a so much more powerful motor than it is. I mean, even with just a little bit of throttle, you can really start to understand you know, how powerful this car is. And yes, it's modified and everything. It makes about 230 horse, but you know, it really is a strong contender. I mean, this car competed with, you know, other cars like the Neon SRT4, you know, the Civic Si, I mean the Cobalt SS, which is the sister car to this. You know, it's really just amazing. I mean, you put it in a low gear and you lug it and you can seriously get it going. You don't have to downshift, 2 gears. I mean, this car is really usable in any gear you're pretty much in. You have enough torque. And even though it's a 2-liter 4-cylinder, it's really quite amazing. And it's really interesting because the clutch almost feels like it has variable, I mean, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a really interesting clutch. The engagement is so far down, it's almost at the base of the floor. And rev matching this car is relatively easy. You know, just a little bit of the throttle and the computer sorts it out for you. You don't really have to worry about it too much. And this is a drive-by-wire throttle body, so, you know, all you have to do, a little bit of gas, and you can rev match very easily. I mean, this vehicle's at 185,000 miles. I mean, even after all of that, the transmission feels really good. It doesn't grind in any gears, and it's a 5-speed. Engagement is really good. You don't have to hug the left or right side of the wall of each gear in the transmission. You know, it's really amazing how usable it is. And this is obviously a higher power application. So you'd think, okay, you know, with this many miles, how is the transmission not gonna? How is in one gear not grinding? Something that's really trippy. And as I mentioned earlier, the gauges, the speedometer, the tachometer, they're all over to your right. So, you know, if you really run a rev match, you've really got to, you know, pay attention to the revs. See, it sounds a little luggy at lower RPMs when you're in the higher gears, but once you get it into the RPM band, you don't really have to worry about it too much. I mean, it's actually really quite surprising, you know, how quickly you can get up to speed in this thing. I mean, look at this. We're in 5th gear. We're going 60 miles an hour, turning 2,000 RPM. I'm going to put it on the floor here. I mean, that is unbelievable that it's able to do that. You have all that torque down low, and you have a fair bit of mid-range power, so that also helps. But my gosh, it's really amazing. And as far as handling goes, it's really flat, and it corners really well. I notice a really little bit of body roll in the rear. That's a little bit concerning, but you don't have to worry about it too much. I mean, this car's natural tendency is to understeer, and you know, the steering wheel, it feels slightly vague on center, but it's not that bad at all. You know, other cars at the time, I mean, like that Civic we drove, they felt, you know, the steering in that was really excellent. I don't know, that's the only thing I can really compare this to. It's, you know, it's that good. And just when you're driving along, I have to point out, this is a really raw sounding 4-cylinder. And I don't know if it was designed or supposed to, oh, that was a coolant light. Okay, wonderful. I don't know if it was designed or supposed to be that way, but you know, it's just raw. All right, we're gonna get it into 2nd gear. We're gonna do a little roll here. Here we go. We're gonna roll into it. Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. I mean, that supercharger whine is insane. That's insane. We're just gonna go ahead and do one more here, and we're gonna do it in 2nd gear. We might go through a few gears, but we'll see here what happens. Here we go. Unbelievable. That sound. The supercharger whine is immense. Absolutely immense. It just sings. It's so raw. It's really amazing. I mean, it pulls so well all the way through the rev range. I notice it does start to lose a little bit of power up at the top end, right when you get to around 6,000. But it just wraps all the way up there. I mean, no hesitation, no resistance at all. It's really amazing. I mean, this is what, you know, tuner cars have always been about. And I know this is the American rendition of, you know, what a tuner car should be. I mean, this was all based around tuner culture. You know, I mean, this is an American version of, you know, the Japanese variants of their tuner cars. It's really amazing. It really is. And you know, in the eyes of production car numbers, this car was not relatively successful, but the thing is, it's a low numbers car. It's designed to be unique, it's designed to be rare, and that's really what makes it special. And you're not going to be seeing too many of these around, and that's what makes this car so amazing. It's so unique, and they're becoming so rare. And I have to say, and I don't like to say this about too many cars, because you really have to understand, you know, everything about a car and what makes it important. But I guarantee you, this car will go up in value. With low miles and a preserved engine, transmission that's stock, there's really not much to go wrong. It's quite amazing. And you know, this car is weird, it's quirky, and it's just really an amazing piece of automotive engineering. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I had an absolute blast driving this car, getting to check it inside and out. I hope you guys had fun watching the video, and I'll see you guys all back again here very soon in the next video. See ya.